Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I used to think my marriage was rock solid. I was Tom, 32. For the last 5 years, my life was wrapped around Sarah, my wife. From the outside, we had it all. A nice house, good jobs, a relationship that looked perfect. But the truth was different. For 2 years, we'd been trying desperately for a baby. At first, there was hope. Then came the letdowns, the negative tests, the quiet nights where we just existed, waiting for the next try. The next appointment, the next failure. Then came the desperation. I still remember the way her voice broke when she first mentioned IVF. We were on the couch, Sarah curled up next to me, her fingers twisting the edge of her sweater. "It's our best shot," she whispered, her eyes holding something fragile, like hope mixed with exhaustion. I didn't even think. "Of course," I said, pulling her close. "We'll do whatever it takes." From then on, she took over. The appointments, the paperwork, the scheduling. She handled it all. First, it made sense. Her job was more flexible and I was buried at work. "You're stressed enough, honey," she told me, waving away my concerns when I asked if I should be more involved. "It's just routine stuff. You don't need to be there for every little thing. The clinic will call if they need anything important." And I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? When we finally went in for the embryo transfer, I was right there, holding her hand as the doctor explained everything. It was supposed to be our moment, the start of something beautiful. I remember squeezing Sarah's fingers, whispering, "This is it," as she gave me a small, nervous smile. Now I see that was the moment she cut me out. Months went by. Sarah's belly grew, and so did my excitement. I spent hours reading about being a dad, planning the baby's room, imagining what our child would be like. Then, one evening, I was looking through some insurance papers, just making sure everything was in order, when I saw it. A sperm donor ID. Not my name, not our case number, a completely different code. At first, my brain just wouldn't accept it. I checked the paperwork again and again, comparing the donor ID to our number, but it didn't match. That was the first time my stomach dropped. My hands felt sweaty as I flipped through the pages, searching for some explanation. There has to be a mistake, I told myself. A simple error, a mix-up, anything but what it looked like. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but I needed to be sure. The next morning, I drove straight to the IVF center. My fingers were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. I told myself I was just going to clear things up. There had to be a logical reason, but deep down, something cold and heavy settled in my chest. When I walked into the clinic, the cool air did nothing to calm the heat rising up my neck. The smell of disinfectant and something flowery filled my nose, but all I could focus on was the knot in my gut. I went straight to the front desk, keeping my voice steady, just a man looking for answers. "Hi," I said, giving the receptionist a tight smile. I was looking over some papers for my wife's treatment and noticed something odd. "Could you tell me which sample was used for our procedure?" She smiled back, completely unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. "Of course, sir. Let me pull that up for you." Her fingers moved across the keyboard, the clicking echoing in my ears. I waited, forcing myself to breathe normally. Then she frowned. "That's strange," she murmured, leaning closer to the screen. My pulse jumped. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "It looks like the sample used wasn't the one originally assigned to your case." My heart stopped. "Say that again." She glanced at me, her smile gone. "I mean, it looks like a donor sample was used instead, but that should have required your signed consent." I felt like the floor had tilted. My throat went dry. "I never signed anything." Her eyebrows furrowed. She looked down at the file again, flipping a page, her expression changing from confusion to something uneasy. "Oh," she swallowed. "It says here that your wife authorized the change." Everything inside me went ice cold. "So you just switched the sample without checking with me?" My voice was eerily calm, but underneath, something broke. The receptionist's face paled. "Yes," she stammered, then looked at the screen again, as if searching for a way out. That's not supposed to happen. We have rules to prevent that." "Then explain how it did." I could feel the pressure building behind my eyes, the kind of rage that comes when you realize your whole life has been a lie. She fumbled for words, her face twisting with panic. I don't know. This shouldn't have been possible. Let me speak to my supervisor. We need to find out why you weren't consulted." I didn't wait. I didn't care what she or anyone else at that clinic had to say. I turned and walked out, my vision narrowing as I headed straight for my car. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I don't even remember the drive home, just the suffocating weight on my chest, the pounding in my ears. By the time I got home, my whole body was vibrating with anger. I slammed the front door open, my footsteps heavy on the floor, and there she was, Sarah, sitting on the couch, crying. She already knew. Her face was red and blotchy, her hands trembling as she wiped her eyes. She barely looked up before she choked out, "You went to the IVF center." It wasn't a question. I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, feeling like I was looking at a stranger. She swallowed hard, looking away. "My friend works there," she whispered. "She told me you were there. She told me you were arguing with them." My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. "Is that the same friend who helped you switch the samples?" She sucked in a sharp breath, her whole body flinching. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. She knew. She had always known. And now it was time for the excuses. My voice came out cold, quiet. "Why?" she hiccuped, rubbing her face as fresh tears spilled over. You wouldn't understand. Try me." She hesitated. Then the truth started spilling out in broken, stammering pieces. I wanted the best for our child," she whispered. Something inside me snapped. "The best? Meaning?" Sarah swallowed hard, her fingers twisting together. "Yes, I used Ben's. Couldn't move, couldn't speak. The world around me blurred into nothing but static." "Why? Damn it, why would you lie to me? You really want to know why, Tom?" she said, tilting her head. "Fine. I wanted the best." "Best?" She let out a short, bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Ben was an athlete, Tom. A real man, tall, strong, built for more than just sitting behind a desk. And he's good-looking, way better than you. I wanted my child to have the best," she interrupted, her eyes gleaming. "I looked at you and I knew I could do better. Ben's build, his body, his talent. That's the kind of legacy I wanted. Not yours." Something else inside me broke, but she wasn't finished. "You should be grateful, Tom," she murmured, almost mocking. "I let you believe this was your baby. I was even going to let you raise it. But deep down, we both know you could never measure up." A breath escaped my lips, and then I laughed. A dark, bitter, humorless laugh that echoed in the room like something out of a nightmare. This wasn't just betrayal. This was insane. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at the woman I thought I knew. I don't remember when I walked out that door, but I remember one thing. The cold, solid thought that settled in my mind like a stone. This wasn't going to end with just a divorce. No, that would be too easy. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to erase her because she didn't just take my child away from me. She took my entire future, and I was going to make sure she lost hers too. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a hotel, turned off my phone, and sat in silence, staring at the ceiling. The rage hadn't fully hit me yet. Not the kind that makes you break things, scream, or lash out. This was something different, something colder, because Sarah hadn't just cheated. She hadn't just lied. She had carefully planned my removal from my own child's life, and she thought I would never find out. Now I had a choice. I could go home, confront her immediately, let my anger explode, or I could let her believe she had one, let her think she was safe right up until the moment I took everything from her. I chose the second option the next morning. I sat across from my lawyer, my hands clenched into fists on the desk. "If I leave her now, what happens?" I asked. She glanced down at my notes, her brow furrowing. "Legally, you're presumed the father unless you challenge paternity in court. If you don't act fast, you could still be responsible for child support, regardless of biology." I swallowed hard. Sarah had almost trapped me forever. What if I prove she committed fraud? My lawyer leaned back, tapping her pen against the desk. "That would change everything. If we can prove she deliberately misled you, then you wouldn't be financially liable." She exhaled sharply. "But we need solid proof. The clinic's records would help. But ideally," she met my eyes, "we need a recorded admission." I nodded, my mind already working. "And what about our assets? You need to move them immediately. If she files first, she can argue for an even split." I had work to do. For the next few weeks, I played my part. I went home. I smiled. I pretended. I let Sarah believe I was still the clueless, trusting husband she had always counted on. Meanwhile, I was silently dismantling everything she had built. Every night after she fell asleep, I worked. I drained and transferred our shared accounts, making sure every dollar I had earned was protected. I legally separated the house from her claim, putting it in a trust under my name alone, and I documented everything. I went back to the fertility clinic, this time sitting face-to-face with the director. "I want an investigation," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I need to know exactly how this happened, how a donor was used without my consent." The director looked uncomfortable. "This is highly unusual," she admitted. "We have strict verification procedures." "Then explain how my wife was able to switch the donor without my signature." She frowned and turned to her screen, pulling up the digital records. I watched as her expression darkened. "She did sign off on the change herself," she said slowly. "But that should have triggered a secondary confirmation process with you." Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she scrolled through files. Then she froze. Oh! I leaned forward. What? Her lips pressed into a thin line. It looks like the verification was bypassed. I already knew the answer, but I needed to hear her say it. By who? She hesitated, then exhaled sharply. Her friend, Lisa. The one who works here. I sat back, my jaw tight. I want this in writing, I said. A full report. I need proof that my wife and her friend orchestrated this. The director nodded, her face pale. We'll launch an internal review immediately. 3 days later I got the call. Mr. Myers, the director said, her voice clipped. We completed our investigation. She took a breath. Sarah's friend, Lisa, manipulated the system to bypass the verification process. This was a serious breach of protocol. I already knew what was coming next. She's been fired. The clinic fired her friend immediately. I got their confession, not all at once. Not in some dramatic, teary breakdown. No, Sarah wasn't the type to admit guilt easily, but I didn't need her to. Instead, I played the long game. I let her think I hadn't figured it all out yet. I asked small, calculated questions, little things about her ex, Ben, about the clinic. I listened as she spoke, catching the slight hesitations, the inconsistencies. Did you ever run into him, your ex? I asked casually one night over dinner. Sarah barely looked up from her plate. Oh no, haven't seen him in years. But a week before, she had mentioned bumping into him at a cafe. A tiny slip she didn't even realize she had made. One by one, the cracks widened. I secured my legal escape. I filed a formal complaint with the fertility clinic, ensuring there was a record of my challenge. I arranged with my lawyer to contest paternity the moment I filed for divorce. And then I set up a meeting with him, the real father, my wife's ex, Ben. At first, he was wary, defensive. But when I laid out what I knew, when I showed him the clinic records proving Sarah had personally signed off on the donor switch, his face drained of color. He hadn't known. He had thought, just like me, that this child had been conceived the way Sarah claimed. By the time I left that meeting, I had all the confirmation I needed. Now all that was left was the final blow. I came home early that day. Sarah was in the nursery, humming softly as she folded tiny baby clothes. She looked peaceful, content, like a woman who had everything she wanted. I stood in the doorway watching her for a long moment. She turned, smiling when she saw me. You're home early, she said, walking toward me. I let her kiss me. I let her believe, for just a few more seconds, that her world was still intact. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a manila envelope, placing it on the dresser beside her. Her smile faltered. What's this? Open it. She hesitated, then pulled out the papers inside. First, the divorce papers. Then, the official notice from my lawyer revoking financial support. I watched as her eyes skimmed the first few lines, her breath catching. Confusion flickered across her face. Then panic. What is this? She whispered. I met her gaze, my voice calm. It's everything you deserve. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Faster now, searching for something, anything that wasn't there. Her name. It wasn't on any major assets. The house, mine. The savings, gone, transferred months ago. Any shared financial ties dissolved. She went stiff, her breath hitching as her fingers tightened around the papers. You, her voice shook. You planned this. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Of course I did. You are not the only one who can plan. The only difference? Mine was all legal. Her chest rose and fell unevenly, panic creeping into her expression. She gripped the edges of the documents as if they might somehow change if she just held on tight enough. Tom, please, we can fix this. I tilted my head, my voice as cold as I felt inside. Fix what? I interrupted. You didn't want me. You wanted my name, my money, my life. You made that clear when you swapped our child for someone else's. Her face twisted, her lips parting as if to argue, but no words came. I watched her mind scramble for an excuse, a justification, something to make me doubt myself, to make me hesitate. But the baby. I stared at her, unblinking. Not my baby, not my problem. Sarah started shaking with the weight of what was happening. You can't just walk away from us, she whispered. I turned for the door, not even sparing her another glance. Watch me. Behind me I heard it, the first soft sob, the first crack in the perfect life she had built on lies. But it wouldn't be the last. The courtroom was silent, except for the occasional shuffle of papers and hushed whispers between lawyers. I sat at my table, calm and composed. Ready. Sarah sat across from me, her posture stiff, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. She knew she was losing, but she still thought she could talk her way out of it. She thought her tears, her usual act, would work. She was wrong. This time, there was nothing to manipulate, no emotions to twist, no sympathy to beg for. Everything was documented. Everything was laid out in black and white. The fertility clinic report, the financial transfers, the written statements confirming the donor switch was planned. This wasn't an argument. It was the end. The judge flipped through the files, adjusting her glasses. She turned to Sarah's lawyer. Mrs. Myers, does your client have anything to dispute the evidence provided? Her lawyer hesitated, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He glanced at Sarah, but she said nothing. She just sat there, pale, silent, defeated. Then he exhaled and shook his head. No, Your Honor. The judge turned her gaze to Sarah, then spoke with the same calm authority that had filled the courtroom. Let's discuss financial resolution. Given the evidence of fraud, Mr. Myers's assets remain his sole property. Mrs. Myers will not receive any financial compensation from this divorce. Sarah's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. What? She gasped. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously in her ear, but she barely seemed to hear him. Her mouth opened and closed, her hands gripping the table as if steadying herself against a blow. The judge continued, her tone neutral, unyielding. Additionally, given that Mr. Myers is not the biological father, the court recognizes his right to revoke any paternal claims to the child. He will not be financially obligated for child support. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom, a quiet wave of reaction from those watching. I kept my expression steady, but inside, a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying lifted. Sarah's lawyer cleared his throat, pushing his chair back and standing. Your Honor, my client requests consideration for emotional damages due to the dissolution of the marriage. She was under stress when the judge held up a hand, cutting him off. Enough. Her voice was firm. Final. Mrs. Myers willingly deceived her husband, knowingly altered medical procedures without his consent, and falsified financial statements. There will be no additional compensation awarded. Consider her lucky that I am not ordering a criminal investigation against her. Sarah flinched, as if the words themselves struck her. The judge tapped her gavel once. This court finds in favor of the petitioner, Tom Myers. Case closed. And just like that, it was over. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the papers in front of her as though she could change them by sheer will. Her lawyer sighed, closed his briefcase, and didn't say another word to her. He had done all he could, and he knew it. I stood, buttoned my suit jacket with slow precision, and turned toward the exit. I didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, I took a deep breath. The air felt different, lighter, cleaner, free. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled to her number, and blocked it. Then, without hesitation, I deleted every last trace of her from my life. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. After everything that had happened, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let the fertility clinic walk away from this without consequences. They had played a direct role in this mess, and I intended to make them pay for it. I consulted my lawyer and started preparing a lawsuit. The case was solid. The clinic had broken their own rules, allowed unauthorized tampering with genetic material, and completely failed in their duty of care. A public trial would have been a disaster for them. Endless scrutiny, lost trust, and lawsuits from other patients wondering if their own procedures had been compromised. It didn't take long for them to reach out. They wanted to keep things quiet, to avoid dragging their name through the mud. After a few rounds of negotiations, they offered a settlement, a significant sum tax-free. In exchange for my silence and a signed agreement, I took it. Not because I needed the money. I had already made sure Sarah wouldn't get a single penny of mine. But because it was justice, because it was proof that they had messed up and they knew it. And because, at the end of the day, I had already won. The real twist came after the divorce. Sarah, still reeling from losing everything, decided she wasn't going down alone. She turned her attention to Ben, the man she had chosen over me, the man whose genes she thought were superior. She expected him to step up, to claim the child, and, more importantly, to pay for it. But Ben wasn't interested in playing daddy. She took him to court, demanding child support, presenting him as the biological father. I almost laughed when I heard about it. The arrogance, the entitlement. It was so Sarah. She had orchestrated this entire mess, convinced she was outsmarting everyone. And now she was scrambling, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. The courtroom was tense the day of the hearing. Sarah sat there, her usual confident mask slipping, while Ben, looking as uncomfortable as I'd ever seen him, barely met her gaze. His lawyer argued the case quickly and effectively. Ben was a sperm donor, nothing more. He had signed no agreements to raise the child, made no promises, had no legal responsibility. Sarah had made this choice entirely on her own. The judge didn't even take long to decide. The ruling was clear. Ben had no financial obligation. He wasn't a father. He was a donor. Sarah had played her hand, and she had lost. I wasn't in that courtroom, but when I got the news, I could picture it perfectly. Sarah's face twisting in disbelief, her desperate arguments falling on deaf ears. She had built her entire life on manipulation, thinking she could control everyone around her. But reality had finally caught up with her. A few months later, the baby was born. And with that, the final, cruel twist in Sarah's grand plan was revealed. The child, her so-called perfect baby, had Down syndrome. I didn't know how to feel when I first heard the news. Part of me felt a strange, quiet sadness for the child. Innocent, unaware of the circumstances of his birth, yet burdened with the weight of his mother's choices. He hadn't asked to be the product of manipulation and lies. He was just a baby who deserved love, care, and acceptance. As for Sarah, I didn't even know what to call the emotion I felt toward her. It wasn't sympathy, it wasn't satisfaction. It was something in between, something strange and unsettling. She had wanted a perfect baby, a beautiful, athletic child who would grow up strong, successful, and admired. She had chosen Ben because of his looks, his genes, because she thought she could engineer her ideal future. But genetics don't take orders. They don't bend to ambition or selfish desires. And Sarah, in all her arrogance, never imagined that Ben, the so-called better man, could carry a genetic condition that would change everything. She had tried to play God, and she had failed. Now she was truly alone. No husband, no financial support, no doting father to step in and share the burden. And worst of all, no perfect baby. Just reality. Cold, unchangeable, and merciless. For the first time since this all started, I wondered what was going through her mind. Was she devastated? Ashamed? Did she finally understand what she had done? Or was she still clinging to her delusions, refusing to accept the consequences? I didn't know. And honestly, I didn't care. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.